Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and we're going to be reading this article from Arctos by Dr. Alexander Dugin on how empires are civilizations. And so Alexander Dugin here is analyzing the shifting sands of geopolitics, highlighting the rebirth of empires in a world that struggles between unipolarity and multipolarity, and where state civilizations emerge as the new champion of global power dynamics. Okay, so let's see what we think of this article. So we've already covered some of his other works related to civilization states, and I'm curious about what he has to say here. So the topic of the empire will inevitably come to the forefront. The term state civilization, introduced in scholarly discourse by our friend Chinese thinker Zhang Weiwei, essentially means empire. Okay. At the recent meeting of the Valdai Club and in his earlier policy speeches, Putin directly called Russia a state civilization. Essentially, this is a declaration of a move towards an empire, not historically, but rather in a technical sense. An empire is a form of supranational political organization with a singular strategic making center, the emperor, and a wide diversity of local subjects, from communities to ethnarchies and fully fledged polities, encompassing a vast expanse and possessing a distinct civilizational, religious, cultural, and ideological specificity. Okay, so what he's saying here is they're going to have some unifying forces in common, which the West has completely lost. They have essentially no unifying forces in common anymore. One can join the empire peacefully, but also forcefully. If harmony is established with bordering regions, they can retain partial sovereignty, and in the case of an empire, it is not so crucial whether the bordering states closely tied to the empire are independent or part of it. They are certainly a part of the vast expanse, and this is the most important thing. As long as they behave correctly, they can consider themselves nation states. Okay? So they're a part of the sphere of influence of the kind of cultural center. So you have a Russian civilization, you have a Chinese civilization, you have an Indian civilization, and then you might have other nation states that are a part of that just kind of cultural grouping. If they start rebelling against the empire and align with another empire, their fate is not enviable. So we're seeing that with Ukraine. This applies not only to Ukraine and other post-Soviet states, but also to Taiwan and many others. The singular empire, a unipolar world, is conceived as a single empire, essentially the USA and its satellites, united in NATO and other blocs. Contemporary American political scientist Niall Ferguson, funded by the Rothschild banking family. Okay, so when we talk about the banking cartels, we mean the Rothschild and their allies, demonstrate how the imperial idea gradually permeated modern American political discourse. So this is something that they're going to get into this in a second, but I think it's so weird that this has happened to America, because America used to have the exact opposite mentality. So let's read on. Whereas the USA once saw itself as a republic, and an empire, especially the British one, was perceived negatively, representing what liberty-loving Americans fought against during the War of Independence and afterwards, the idea of a global empire began to captivate American elites until neoconservatives loudly pronounced this coveted word. Okay, so, there's so many things I could say there. I'm not sure I'm going to say some of them, but that is the case. America used to hate empires and used to be liberty-loving, and it's very clearly not the case anymore. America essentially declared itself the empire governing mankind. Liberal globalist elites around the world agreed with them. However, this evoked rejection from another segment of the elite. This other segment gradually became so influential that it grew into directly repudiating American hegemony and declaring themselves empires, meaning state civilizations. This is multipolarity. Okay, so we see really the descendants of the non-aligned movement become the multipolarity movement. And so that's where we're at with BRICS. This paragraph right there is about the BRICS grouping and the BRICS Plus unification. They're really going to have to come up with a new name. Calling it BRICS Plus, I mean, you can't use the acronym for the beginning letter of each of the countries at this point. You have to come up with a new name for it. Critical review of the Western Empire can be found in the works of left-wing authors Negri and Hart, renowned sociologist Emmanuel Todd, or the profound and non-conventional thinker Alain Soral. Okay, so we have the Seven Empires again, which is a major thought, the major framework for Alexander Dugin. And this is about the multipolar project. A multipolar world denotes the coexistence of several empires, fully sovereign, primarily in relation to the United States, against its claim to exclusivity and universality, and also towards each other. Today, the world is gradually showing signs of multipolar heptarchy, i.e. the model of the seven empires is emerging. You have the Western Empire, which is the United States, EU, vassals and lesser vassals. The Eurasian Empire, which is Russia and the post-Soviet space. come what may. So they're already fighting over that. In Ukraine, you're seeing hundreds of thousands dead over that. So there's already a fight between the Western Empire and the Eurasian Empire there. This is our emerging state civilization, as mentioned by Putin and Valdez. The Chinese Empire, which is mainland China and Taiwan, and several states gravitating towards China from the One Belt, One Road initiative. And so their major theater of war is going to be over Taiwan. So you see Eurasian Empire versus Western Empire. Their theater of war is in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe. And then you see the Chinese Empire versus the Western Empire. Their major theater of war is going to be the South China Sea. Then you see the Indian Empire, Bharat, Nepal, Bangladesh, plus Southeast Asian nations leaning towards India. And so they don't really have a contention with the Western Empire, although you're seeing some elements of fracturing there where, one, I think to a certain extent they recognize that they want to become a world power, and the West doesn't allow any other world powers aside from America. And so that has to be concerning to them. But also you're seeing places like Canada accusing them of assassinating people within Canada. And so that's another major contention there. And so they don't have as many major contentions, and they're really the empire that might flip to the Western side if things came to a world war. So that's something to watch out for. Then you have the Islamic Empire here, a potential block of Islamic countries with major poles being Saudi Arabia and plus Arab Sunni countries, Shia, Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, Indonesia, Maghreb countries, which is in North Africa, and others. So this Islamic Empire, it could have been considered two separate empires between Shia and Sunni. But I do think, especially given the recent rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, I think considering them one cohesive whole is becoming more and more likely. And again, another theater of conflict here between the Islamic Empire and the Western Empire. Not only did you have things like the Iraq conflict, the Afghanistan conflict, various other conflicts throughout history, the prior Iraq war over Kuwait and things like that. You have constant tensions with Iran, particularly because of that assassination of Soleimani, I believe his name was, that the American Empire inflicted on them. And so right now you have the Judeo-Islamic War of 2023 between Israel and Gaza, the people of Gaza, who they are currently committing war crimes against the people of Gaza. And that is the current theater of war between the Islamic Empire and the Western Empire. Then you have the Latin American Empire, based on a union of Brazil and Argentina with the addition of other countries, right up to the Caribbean nations and Mexico. So again, a few major powers within Latin America. You have Mexico, you have Argentina, and you have Brazil. I'm trying to think if there's any real other major powers. I mean, you could say Cuba fights like it punches above its weight class. You could say Colombia is decently strong. But I think those three are really the big ones. And Mexico has a lot of problems with the United States. I mean, not only did the United States steal land from Mexico a while ago, but the United States, their entire drug war is the cause of the cartel violence within Mexico. So they dislike them because of that. And so it's any guess about what's going to happen, what type of conflict might arise there. But it seems like Latin America does want to get out from under the thumb of America. And so if I had to guess, I would say if a conflict does arise, it's going to be because of border tensions between the United States and Mexico. I mean, more and more people are coming over the border. Mexico does not like so many people from Latin America coming through its country to get to America. You have various guns and drugs and various criminal elements transporting things to America. You could see anything from America invading Mexico, which a number of elected officials have already mentioned, to Mexico getting fed up with the United States and maybe, say, joining BRICS or something like that. But there's potential actual chances for escalations of violence between the Latin American Empire and the Western Empire as well. And then you have the African Empire, where, again, that's another one of those theaters of war. I don't talk about it as much, but you have various elements within really like the Central African areas, particularly former colonies of France, that they're overthrowing, the militaries are overthrowing the Western elements within their country and becoming more sovereign nations. And so you have places like South Africa and Ethiopia, who are already clearly on the side of the multipolar bloc and clearly in contentions with the Western Empire at this point because they joined BRICS. And so you have that situation where there's already flare-ups, there's already tensions in that theater of war. So really, if you're looking at this, Eurasian Empire, Chinese Empire, Islamic Empire, Latin American empire, and African empire. 5 of the 7 are pretty clearly in the multipolar world block. I think India is anyone's guess, but those 5 are clearly in the multipolar world block. And of those 5, there are 3 that are currently in a war. The African empire are having coups. They're having fighting back and forth. The Islamic Empire, the Judeo-Islamic War of 2023, they're having fights back and forth. The Eurasian Empire with the Western Empire, they're having a fight over Ukraine, territory in Ukraine. And it looks like the Chinese Empire is going to have a fight with the Western Empire over Taiwan. And so when you look at this, and instead of looking at the trees, look at the entire forest, you can see that World War III has already started to a very large extent. There's already conflicts in multiple theaters of war. And the United States, the Western Empire, is completely overextended here. They're really losing really badly. And I don't really understand how people are not seeing this. The only conflict that could arise that hasn't really started yet is the Latin American Empire versus the Western Empire. But again, that could start at really any time given the drug cartel chaos that goes on in Mexico. Okay, so I talked quite a bit on that. We're going to have to kind of speed through this. I have a little bit more to go over, and I'm already at over 11 minutes. The first empire, still claiming exclusivity, formed after the collapse of USSR, and despite its decline, still strives to maintain its hegemony. So Western Empire considers itself at the end of history, and they don't consider the legitimacy of the other 6 empires. Despite all its crises, it remains stronger than any other when taken individually. However, in terms of key metrics, economic, demographic, resources, and even ideological, it falls behind the alliances of the other non-Western empires. The new 3 empires, Russia, China, and India, which, by the way, have a very long history spanning centuries and even millennia, are actively forming. Essentially, they already represent independent sovereign poles and will continue to strengthen and expand their influence. The Islamic Empire, with Baghdad as its logical center, making it a new kind of Abbasid caliphate, is united by a powerful religion and its underlying ideology, but is politically fragmented. I think Palestine has been a unifying factor. Like, the West is unifying kind of around Ukraine and even really to a larger extent around Israel. The Islamic world is uniting around Palestine right now. The African and Latin American empires remain projects, but steps are being taken towards their realization. And again, the United States has tried to thwart those steps at every opportunity. Gaddafi tried to, former leader of Libya, tried to unify Africa, and the United States just did not allow it. They overthrew his country. All 6 empires, excluding the Western one, that is, actual or potential state civilizations, are united today within the expanded post-Johannesburg BRIC structure, though again, how united is India with the rest of them? We'll see. Next year, Russia will chair BRICS, making it an opportune time to advance multipolarity and bolster it ideologically, economically, financially, militarily, and strategically. Okay, so next year is the year to watch out for how unified is BRICS going to become. To achieve multipolarity, and that's another thing I hadn't even really thought of, but wouldn't it be amazing if Russia kind of won its conflict in Ukraine during the same year it was at the head of BRICS? That would there's something about that sounds like it would be like a really big deal. I need to think about that more. To achieve multipolarity, everyone needs to collectively challenge the Western Empire's claim to exclusivity, which I think everyone is at this point, aside from potentially the Indian Empire. Not the empire itself, but its claim. Okay, so what they're trying to say is they don't want to just topple the Western Empire. What they want to say is they don't really care about the Western Empire. They just want to do their own thing. And that really is the kryptonite for the Western Empire, because for them, they need to compete with another empire to rally the troops. And so if the other empire, such as China, just isn't engaging with them and is just doing their own thing, just trading on their own, then the West doesn't really know what to do with that. They don't have a strategy to fight that. And so what they're saying here is they're not trying to challenge the empire on its own. They don't really care about America. They just want America to not dominate the entire world. They don't want America to meddle in their own business. The peoples of the world are called upon to break Western globalist arrogance. This is precisely what Russia is doing in Ukraine today. Southwest Asia represents the first hot conflict between the unipolarity and multipolarity. 3 purely potential poles. For the sake of fairness, one might theoretically propose 3 more gray spaces if the West divides into America and Europe. Then the EU, after first shedding the Atlantic globalist elites and bringing to power continentalists of the de Gaulle type, could become a separate pole, but this is not on the agenda for now. Okay, so he's talking about, this is really interesting. What poles could be forming? I think I mean, I'm hoping that eventually Europe recognizes that they're not benefiting from being under the thumb of America. And so maybe this pole could form in the future. Right now, it's like purely just fantasy because they seem to be just doubling down in this Judeo-Islamic war of 2023. Equally speculative is the idea of a Buddhist civilization led by Japan. However, Japan is entirely dependent on the West and does not pursue an independent policy. Yeah, that's one of those polls that could have easily formed if World War II had not happened. The great space of Oceania is a ghostly entity gradually turning into a zone of military strategic confrontation between the Chinese and American empires. It could have been different, however, it is unlikely that brave Melanesians, Papuans, Australian Aborigines, and militant Maoris could stage an anti-colonial uprising against the Anglo-Saxons unless they receive external help. Africa had help. And it worked out. The situation here is more complex, but it's worth trying for the other poles. Okay, this is an interesting one. See, the thing is, all of Oceania is becoming a military base for the United States, and that means that it's going to become a battleground between the United States Empire, the Western Empire, and the Chinese Empire. And so, yeah, ideally, these people would be able to overthrow the shackles, but we will see how that ends up going. Well, hello, my empire. If empires are returning, now is the time to comprehend their historical roots and understand their origins and the corresponding ideology. It is a highly fascinating topic that will help us understand much about ourselves, the Russians. We are a people of the empire. We have been, are, and always will be, no matter what we call ourselves or what we think of ourselves. The time is coming when we will realize this once more. After all, even the USSR was, in a technical sense as we emphasize, a kind of empire and definitely a state civilization. We just need to recognize that it is our destiny. So I guess you could consider kind of the Warsaw Pact, those other nations, a part of the kind of periphery, the sphere of influence of the USSR. For a deeper acquaintance with this topic, Konstantin Malofeyev, 3-volume Empire and My Philosophical Comprehensive Work, Being an Empire, so this is Alexander Dugin talking, will be highly useful. From there, guided by a detailed and exhaustive bibliography, everyone can venture in this direction, freely choosing routes through the West and East, past and future. Wow, this is really interesting to read, and I think Alexander Dugin did an excellent job here. If you like this video and you want to see more of this type of content, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content. We're diversifying the types of content we do. We're improving how we're doing content creation. We're learning new things all the time. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, critiques, please put that in the comment box below. I always read them. And thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.